Hello, Singapore. Yeah. So what I'm about to introduce is guys that have sold with their artist, right, hundreds of thousands of tickets worldwide, millions upon millions of records that have been streamed, videos that have been seen. These are the guys that couldn't be close to the artist because they manage the artist, right? But they're also involved with some unbelievably great things like the Music Managers Forum, building new models, showing how artists can tour on a cheaper ticket price, but also be involved in all the streams of revenue. I couldn't be more excited to have these wonderful gentlemen, right, about to come on stage and tell you what the heck is going on in the world today and how these artists are the biggest artists in the world and how they have no fear of the internet, the future, or anything else. So I'm really proud to be moderating this panel today. Full disclosure, I am at Getty Images. I went totally digital, but I was one time a concert promoter and a senior vice president at Sony Music and decided to go into the whole digital space and couldn't be happier. But I love working with all of them. Please give a big hand, right, for Brian, Bernie, Lee, and Benjy. You're very welcome. So what I want you guys each to do, right, and I think this is really proper because it's the best way to do it, is introduce yourselves, give just a little background on the artist that you manage, right, and let the audience know what it's all about.
My name is Lee Trink. I spent the bulk of my career in record labels and running labels like Virgin and Capitol, and now I manage Kid Rock and Uncle Kracker, amongst some other things, and that's me. Keep it short.
My name is Bernie Cahill, reformed lawyer, entertainment lawyer, now manager. I look after Zach Brown, Dwight Yoakam, and also a handful of actors on the film and TV side.
My name is Benjy Grinberg. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the U.S., and I have a slightly different route here. I started a record company, an independent record company in 2003 that over the course of time evolved also into a management company. And we had Mac Miller and Wiz Khalifa, and those are sort of our main artists up to this point.
Hi, I'm Brian Message. I'm a reformed accountant who stumbled across a couple of guys in the 1990s who were managing Radiohead, so that was my introduction to management. Nowadays, I have a business that manages and partners with about 30 artists, some old ones, some young ones, some doing well, some not doing so well. And I'm also chairman of an organization called the Music Managers Forum, which is an organization that represents about 400 managers and about 1,000 artists.
Excellent. I'm going to start with you, Brian. I really want to go into this idea of what's the new role that managers play these days. Like, what are you doing now? And you can use even experience of what recently went on with Nick Cave and how he's had one of the best runs ever.
Yeah, I suppose I'm sure this is similar for a lot of us. In the 1990s and the early 2000s, my role as a manager was very much the representative of an artist at the record company table. I was there to try and help move their career through a very influential partner being the label. I think nowadays much of my role and the role of my partners is that of partnering with or almost being like a chief exec of an artist's business. So for all the acts that we work with, we tend to be managing all of their revenue streams across everything they do, not just within music, but through all the other disciplines that those artists might work through, particularly audio-visual. That's obviously a really important part of the play now, and we're looking very much at global operations. We're tending to hire a lot more personnel, digital people into the artist businesses. So much less focus on press, promotion, radio, and trying to drive connections, direct connections with fans and making that artist-fan experience a real one, whether that's through tickets, recorded music, interaction of any description. So it's very much moved on from being a representative of at someone else's table to that sort of all-encompassing business role.
Benjy, I got to tell you, a few years ago, Sonos decided to shoot a commercial in my house, and they brought this brilliant photographer named George Lang over to my house, and he was going off on this one artist. You know the one artist. Tell the story.
Wow. Well, I think you're talking about Mac Miller.
That's it.
So Mac Miller is an artist from Pittsburgh. I'm from Pittsburgh. Mac is from Pittsburgh. Wiz is from Pittsburgh. A lot of our staff is originally from Pittsburgh, and that's where we really developed the label. I met Mac in the studio, and we decided to work together. This was sort of around the time that Wiz was really blowing up. And we had the opportunity to go to major labels. They all wanted to sign him as well. But both he and I really wanted to stay independent. We thought, we felt the momentum. We felt like we could do it by ourselves. And we both had sort of that entrepreneurial spirit where it's like, all right, we think we can push this, really far without anyone else's help. And so we just went for it. At the time, we had a very small staff. There were maybe 4 or 5 of us on the team. And we built it up and put out his first album in November of 2011, and it went to #1, sold 145,000 copies in the first week. And it was the first #1 album in the US by an independent artist in 20 years, and only the second in history. So that was a really, really big deal for us, and it was a big deal for the independent music community. I actually talked to Macklemore a number of months ago, and he was telling us how, what we did was, sort of showed him the blueprint for what he eventually did, and gave him inspiration for staying independent as well. And hopefully it did that for other people. And I have nothing against major labels. We have deals with major labels as well. But, I think the Mac Miller experience really showed people that you can do this on your own, and you can have a #1 album without radio as well, which is a big lesson in it.
Bernie, Roar, Zach Brown. An artist that doesn't fit any sort of, set of rules of where they're at and where the format's at. How's it been for you?
Well, I think that's good and bad when you have an artist that doesn't fit a particular format, because you obviously hope to reach a bigger audience, but at the same time, you need to service your core. And in this case, it was the country format. We had signed to every country label passed on us. So we signed with Atlantic in New York, and Atlantic in New York did not have a country radio staff, so we put it together ourselves. And that was a challenge. As a lawyer, I used to represent a bunch of those guys, so we kind of cobbled together the team, and we went on to have a real run where I think 11 out of the first 14 singles that we worked at radio went to #1. So it was a great run for us, and that sort of, the more we were in that format, it was putting Zach a little bit in that box when we saw him as a sort of multi-format crossover artist. And so while that's going on, we really focused on doing all of the other things that were, we toured with Dave Matthews, we toured Europe with Kings of Leon. We did things that were unexpected for somebody, that was seen at least in that format as a country artist, and it's helped us. I mean, now we just came back from Europe where we headlined O2 London, we headlined O2 Dublin, sold out both. So it's been good, but there's a lot that comes with not fitting in any one particular place.
Well, really great job. Speaking of an artist that multi-formats, beloved by everybody, and in the last
not necessarily everybody,
but Bob did an amazing amazing thing in America last year, and you know what? Listening to you in Toronto on how you rolled that out, it was this idea that Bob wanted to have inexpensive ticket prices, and the partnership that you formed. I mean, brilliant. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about it?
So it started really with an idea and a dinner we had that Rock and I had with Michael Rapino, and Rock really said, the ticket prices are out of control. All the expenses around these tours and entertainment in general. He talked about sports. He talked about even movies, and he just said it's too much, and it's just the fans that are being punished. And it started this dialogue of, let's try and see if we can do something different. Even build a deal in a healthier way where we put everything in the idea was putting all the money in the middle, take the expenses out, and just then decide on who should make that money. And it was a long evolution, and it's eventually what we did. We decided we're going to take every, when it comes to touring, it's not just tickets, it's beer, it's parking, it's lawn chairs, it's anything that they sell. There's a lot of those things, and one of the challenges was Rock wanted it at a rock bottom price. He basically said to me at one point, $20 is what the tickets are going to be. And I said, yeah, we'll have some ticket, we'll definitely do some $20 tickets. He said, no, all the tickets are going to be $20. And in my mind, I was like, Jesus, give me a chance of figuring out how to make money on this deal. But it really, we did a lot of marketing. We tried to educate people about what we're doing. He did a good job as a spokesman for it. And as a result, it was both an amazing result as far as how the fans received it, the number of people that came out. We went from averaging in 2011 10,500 people a night, which is a respectable number, to 16,500 people in 2013, and made. We were prepared to make less money. We made more money than we did in 2011, and much more money than we could have made otherwise in 2013.
It's amazing. What I really like about everybody that's on this panel is they really think out of the box, and they really look after the creator's best interest, right? And they're also willing to, what was really fun is watching all of you all talk backstage and share secrets and share ideas and all. One of the things I'm really impressed with, and Brian, I want you to grab the mantle on this, is that in the UK, there's this brilliant thing called the Music Managers Forum, where all the managers have somewhat of an organization where they help young managers out. They discuss a lot of the great ideas that they're doing, right? And they're really building a lot of what are the new models out there, because as everything is changing really quickly. So, Brian, if you could just give us a little background on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. It's a really interesting time in the whole business right now, and a lot of what we're trying to do as a group of managers, obviously, is to make it a better environment, not just for managers, but for the artists that we represent. Look, we've pushed quite strongly for the whole label services operation, and a lot of us have supported the label services operation. I think, as you alluded to earlier, Nick Cave took the bold move of leaving his label after 30 years to go with a new structure and a new way of doing things, and it worked very well. So there's a lot of us managers who are trying to support that structure as an alternative way, and label services is very much a change of mindset as opposed to working necessarily with a straight record deal. The idea, obviously, with the label services is that they are providing services to you as an artist management and an artist. So you decide the agenda, you set the strategy, and you run the campaign, and they fit in around you. So a lot of us are trying to push that really hard. An important one for us, the landscape has been a difficult one, obviously, in recorded music for the last 10 years. That collision between technology and rights holders has been really messy and difficult, and doesn't seem to be getting much easier. There is a feeling that there is some good momentum in the digital space. There are still a lot of challenges. One of the things that we are trying to campaign for at the moment as a group of managers and as a bunch of artists getting into it as well is that with digital revenue royalties, because it's such a different model to the old sales-based model, that we're trying to get legislation passed which will cause all digital revenues to be split 50-50. So all 50% of digital revenues would go straight to the creator. Much like in other revenue streams, in Europe, many revenue streams cannot be assigned in contracts. They must go to the creator. So we're going to try and push that. We're probably going to get our asses kicked in the process because it really disrupts the whole record industry model. But we're trying to push for that because we feel that there's still a lot of distrust and a lot of issues around the transparency of deals between technology and rights holders. So we'd like to try and drive a wedge through that and see at least a good chunk of the money coming back to creators, and we'll figure out the models after that.
Hey, for you managers here, how important is it for you to own your artist, to own their IP, to own their music, to own and I'm hearing a lot of times that people now are even like leasing, their music to, say, a major label or whatever.
I think that there's certainly the monetary aspect of it, and I think that with streaming and with digital, we probably don't even have a real handle on what that revenue stream feels like down the road. But part of it, I think, from just dealing with artists, is an emotional aspect of it, and I think nobody really talks about it. But it's artists can't even wrap their head around it, and they're constantly upset the fact that somebody owns their creation, and there's just something so wrong about that as a concept that even if we were able to dress it up in different ways so the financial aspect would be whatever it is, it would feel better for artists, and I think that a lot of people just lose that kind of emotional aspect to it.
As a record company, we're seeing a lot more artists coming to us. They're coming to us because they don't want to go to a major for whatever their reasoning is. So they look at us as sort of an alternative to doing that, where they can have a label support but not have to deal with whatever they deal with at a major. But a lot of times now they're also asking if they can license us their music rather than us owning it, and it's becoming more and more the trend of licensing, where the artists really want to feel like, look, I made this, I wanna own it, and the record company can help the artist exploit it for any number of years, 5, 7, and then they have it back, and it's a lot more comfortable for them. And I feel like artists are, more and more, sort of, I'm not thinking of the right word, but more and more they don't want to commit for as long of a time. They feel more in control than they ever have, and they want to maintain that control and not give it up. And I think that's going to be a real problem for majors in the future, and it's something that needs to be figured out.
Well, it's all about disruption, and you're seeing that a lot of us here have made different career choices in our lives, right? And Bernie, you going, from the legal side of it and representing artists now into the management side, right? And you're seeing all these new things like they're constantly disrupting, but it also seems to be working as well. Like there's like a lot more areas where you can, Zach Brown, like you were just talking earlier about, which a lot of people out here don't know about. There's a really successful streaming service in the United States called satellite radio, which 25 million people have in their cars, and you just were able to put Zach Brown on the radio there.
Right, Sirius is an important partner for us, and really, if you look at, I think when I look at our statements and I look at the streaming services, satellite radio, the rest of it, I mean, they're a significant number in there. One quick thing about owning your masters and your IP, the reason why artists don't like majors controlling their IP is because sometimes they don't do anything with it. And when they don't do anything with it, it pisses you off. So you want to maintain control, because the reality is if you own your IP and you decide not to do something with it, it's fine. But when it's sitting in a catalog at Universal or some major, it's incredibly frustrating for artists that have really bled for that. And so I think that's what drives that emotion. Satellite radio is, again, really big, and it's back to that getting looks outside the format, and it's for us a big deal, and something that I'd like to know really more about, I don't know, in Europe and Asia, if, you know, how big that particular platform is, but I know that in the States, I mean, it's got to be big for Bob too, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, especially, you know, when he has a tendency to write songs that are very out of the box, not not genre specific. So it ends up giving us a home when we do that. It gives us a home because they're just more open-minded and they just work with you in a different way. I mean, you know, radio, certainly the radio business in America is, to me, it's sort of the worst part of dealing with kind of anything. It's the most excruciating, for many reasons that we don't need to bore you. It'll be too long a story.
Yeah,
so.
I hear you.
I think going back to the ownership thing for a second as well is, you know, these days artists can make their own album, you know, and they don't need necessarily the record company's money to go into a big studio and do, you know, and spend a year doing it. And so since they can sort of go into their home studio or on tour on their laptop or whatever it is where they make their album, it's becoming, you know, less relevant to them for the record company to pay for it and therefore own it. And so it's starting to seem a little disjointed. Like, well, wait, I just made this by myself in my house, but you own it, and I have to recoup, you know, all this money, you know, just myself, you know, but you still own it. It just starts not to make any sense for anybody.
I totally hear you, and as being a person that deals with IP, I mean, I get the whole thing where it is really important that the creator hangs on to it because it can continually make money forever and ever and ever, as we've seen with a lot of our archives or certain, you know, stocks or music or whatever that we've had at Getty. I want to go to an interesting area, and the area I want to go to is all the artists up here that we're talking about have had really great experiences in the live world, right? And the live world being almost this essential thing that is like driving revenue for you, right? You know, brands are getting, you know, big involved in it, right? And then obviously for a career, you know, being a great live artist, you know, you could be Tony Bennett or you could be Sir Paul McCartney out there for, you know, 60 some odd years. What's your take on what's happening in the whole live space? And what's also interesting to me is it seems that where a lot of people complained that music was in the gutter, along comes in America, Bonnaroo, Coachella, all the big, you know, EDM festivals, whatever, right? You know, I mean, it seems to be more exciting than ever.
But part of it also is you can't, you know, the technology doesn't disrupt that.
Yeah.
Because you can't replicate that, and you know, and the idea of of streaming concerts and all that, you know, to me, maybe one day somebody will care. I think no one will ever care about watching live music anywhere else but live. It's also the place where an artist can make the strongest connection with a fan. It's the place where all of the myriad of gatekeepers that exist in every other facet of the business, not that they don't exist, yes, there's promoters, yes, but it is about getting a fan, going after, you know, being in the right room, you know, doing some smart marketing, and then connecting with the fan. And there's the least amount of people that can mess with that between an artist and its fan base, and it's where they can create that strongest bond. And again, there's not technology that is going to disrupt that. I don't see any. It could facilitate.
And I don't know about you guys, but certainly for me, the seeing that interaction between your artists and fans and experiencing that's the best thing that I do in my job. You know, that's certainly the most enjoyable part of the game for me.
Well, it's really interesting, and I'm going to say something here that's a little wacko, but I was at Coachella this year, and Eric Schmidt from Google was there, Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, was there. All the tech community was there, like coming down from San Francisco as a destination. And I really realized, right, like, and I realized this from meeting Sean Parker 10 years ago, that the passion of the tech community loves music, right? And I think that it was really interesting. Yes, they did disrupt it. Yes, it caused a lot of issues and such, but they're really, really passionate about music, right? And I'm wondering if anybody here on this panel has had dialogue with any of the creators of the new digital space, right? And you know, I'm a Spotify user, Rhapsody user, Sirius, you know, love all the, you know, Sonos is totally through my house, and I don't get paid for that. But my point being is, you know, looking at where technology is going right now, and the fact that there's this real passion for it, right? And the fact that I would say the messaging that's been out there in the, say, a normal media world, especially in the U.S., is that music has been somewhat ghettoized in the fact that all you have on television now in the States is like an American Idol or a Voice, like a game show, not a show featuring, you know, like in the UK, I mean, the BBC broadcast Glastonbury, right? But looking at technology and the ways that you can use it now, and the fact that there is this thing. Have any of you guys had any discussions with any of the digital players?
Yeah, look, plenty of discussions. I have a business, small business with Sean Parker. So we do have a bit of a dialogue. But all those guys who are, I know you're absolutely right. They're all passionate music guys. Technology has always disrupted music, and technology has always disrupted all businesses over time. Nothing's new. I think for us, what's been amazing is that technology has allowed artists and fans to be able to communicate in a much more interactive way. The distribution channels have been obviously disrupted completely, and so that's been a great thing. So for me, it's what I see with technological change has been all beneficial. Yes, it's had its moments and pockets of downside, but all those guys are doing it out of a passion as fans, not as people necessarily who are just trying to kill things off.
It's probably the biggest, you asked about the, you know, for managers, what the new world order looks like. The biggest challenge is navigating this new media landscape, which it's evolving every second. We're going to get off this panel and something new is going to happen that affects our artists. And that's why I lose sleep over. It's almost impossible to keep up with it, but we have to. And that's the real challenge of managing in this new era, I think.
But I also I expect in a way that we're in that period of time where there's the most volatility that we will have ever seen. I mean, maybe that won't be the case, but it feels that way, that we just don't know what the world looks like or what the world will look like. I feel like we're starting to get a picture of it, you know, certainly more than we did 2 years ago, but the fact that there'll be something new is because it's still burgeoning. And I think that there will be a period where things will settle out, and there'll still be things that will be new. But I think that we'll be able to handle it in a better way. We'll see it coming because there'll be a way that things are, and you know, it's like some of these other panels. You see how many of the streaming services there are. We just know that it's unsustainable. As are every new thing, it's unsustainable. And eventually things will, I think, and I do hope in a way they'll settle down, and we can really strategize.
I completely agree with you, and I think it's really important for us as managers. You know, a lot of us UK managers, we're the little guys. What would be really great is to have more American managers as well come up and step up, because it's all of us lot who are going to hopefully set the agenda and define how that new landscape is going to be going forward. And then, look, you know, as I think was it Trotsky said, revolution was driven by those that turn up. So, you know, the idea that of managers both sides of the Atlantic working together to try and help set that new agenda, our moment is upon us for sure.
Well, the other interesting thing, and I wanted to bring it up here, and I know that even like Bob has his own beer, right? Is you're watching right now what's going on with brands, and brands love music, right? And so going again back to the Coachella thing, I was driving out there. Every brand in the world had a party, billboard, whatever, right? How has brands helped you? And I mean, looking at going to South by Southwest now, right? It's brands that are paying for the artist, you know, to be there. You know, brands want to be, you know, involved with it. How do you guys look at it? Benjy.
You know, brands are important. I think particularly in the touring side of things, they can really help underwrite a tour, make a tour bigger, make your production bigger. You know, we've seen a lot of interesting things over the last couple of years with brands, not necessarily even with our own artists, but just in the landscape in general, people using it in a more interesting way. And I think that it'll continue to be a big part of it. From my time here in Singapore, I'm really getting an understanding of, particularly in this region, it's a huge part of what's happening in China, and the rest is, it's a big part of it. But I would say for me, in our experience, it's been mainly about touring. And the other thing, sorry, real quick, is for us, branding, you know, working with brands has always been really organic. And so in the case of Wiz, you know, he coming up, he was always wearing Chuck Taylors, and he would rap about it, and it would be a big thing. And so for us, when we look for opportunities like that, it has to make sense. And so it makes sense for the brand because this artist in particular is already representing it and is a positive influence and all these good things. And so at that point, when we approach each other and say, well, we should make this official, and we ended up doing a whole shoe line with Converse for Wiz, it helps build the brand. And that's sort of a non-live aspect of branding, is working together with brands to do something that's organic, natural, and that is an extension of what the artist is already about, rather than just saying like, oh, this carpet company wants to work with our artist, you know, and well, it's a check and blah, blah, blah. It has to make sense, or else the fans start to not really respect what you're up to.
And that's also, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's a mistake that a lot of bands make, where they'll take the check and they don't think about really the impact. And granted, the world is a little bit different, you know, than it used to be. It used to be completely taboo, and now it's acceptable. But you know, not only is it's a bigger win when it's real, but the fans, it does matter. And maybe not for every band. I guess the more pop leaning you are, the less it might matter. You know, for us, we were really fortunate. So you know, we've had a relationship with Jim Beam for years, and like Benjy was saying, he was singing about Jim Beam in songs before we had the deal, and then we had a Harley Davidson sponsored the tour as well, and it can't get more perfect than that. I know that Bernie's got something similar with Jack Daniels and Zach. So when it's perfect, it's really that's the win that's exponential. But I think that there should be some caution, and it shouldn't be, you know, all takers. You know, bring your checkbook and all takers. I think that's a long-term mistake.
It has, I think, a lot of caution. I think that the wrong brand partnership can sink you, for sure. I'd also say that with the cost of touring, sometimes you also don't want to have too many of these partnerships, visible that is. And so one of the cool opportunities when you have an artist of some stature is to do non-consumer facing partnerships. So these are behind the scenes, no one really knows about it. Maybe you're just hosting executives or key folks in a particular company's ecosystem. But that can really help offset touring and other costs. And those non-consumer facing opportunities we love those, and they don't hurt you. And by the way, we still would only do those with cool brands. So, and brands, there's, like you said, an authentic connection between the artist and the brand. Otherwise, we won't even touch it.
There's also a way to do it where the experience is accretive, and I think you have to do it with the right partners. But for our tour, we sort of had this kind of little village that was supplemented by, you know, Jim Beam had set up like airbrush tattoo parlors, and there was a line. You know, there's a line of 100 people at all times waiting to get tattoos. Harley Davidson had Harleys where you could literally throw a leg over and rev the engine and take photos. So it's, if you can have a brand that can actually bring something to the experience, that's also another way where it doesn't feel like, well, we slapped your logo on the thing and took a check and there you go, fans. It's like, here we figured out a way to do something where you fans will actually appreciate the relationship.
We have an interesting one for us. Several of our artists that broke in the old game obviously signed long-term record deals to get investment capital. That's basically, you know, what happened in the early 90s. For a lot of our younger acts, where We don't necessarily have labels involved. In fact, we've got one act coming here playing this weekend, the Boxer Rebellion. When you get a brand to come in and kick in several $100,000, as they've just had in fact last week, it's a game changer, because you then don't have a requirement to get investment capital and give away your IP for long-term rights. You do those deals, and you can keep your freedom, and you can keep. So look, clearly it's a bit of a trade-off, and you're absolutely right in terms of making sure your alliance fits and works. But when you get those opportunities, when a brand can get involved with you as an artist and provide that capital, where you can guarantee how to make your next record, how to market it and promote it, that's pretty seismic.
So going back to the capital part, right, Brian, and I want the panel to jump in on this. You know, there's a lot of capital out there, a lot of belief in new models, and obviously, you know, a lot of the streaming services have raised a lot of money and such. Are you actively, as managers in that, looking at new ways to bring in revenue that not only benefit you, but obviously the artist, and can build that new structure for that new company that could be the tentpole artist or the new management company? Are those things that are actively in the works in any sort of way?
Yeah, look, certainly in our role in the MMF, we managed to encourage the UK government to set up a scheme where if you put $10,000 into a new creative, if it doesn't work, then the investor gets $7,500 back as tax rebate. They get $5,000 back out of the gates, no matter what happens. And we've started to see more of that investment structure being developed into new young artists. It's specifically for that. The Record Company Association as well, the BPI, managed to convince the government as well to set up an export grant scheme for those acts. And look, our good friend Matt Drouin, who manages Metric, has played the Canadian tax system very well in order to help develop his acts. So, you know, we're trying to drive a lot more of that incentive where people can invest easily into young acts, because as we all know, it's a really risky game. So you want to be able to encourage people to put money in and not lose their shirt every time.
Right. I think what's really important here, and it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, is it takes more than money, right? So money's cool, but when I started my label, I didn't have much money at all, and it's just, you know, and it makes you get creative, and you know, doesn't cost money to be on Facebook. It doesn't cost money to do some of these things. And so to me, I think having some capital is great, but having a great team is what is most important. And I would take a great team over capital any day of the week. And so I think that when we were discussing about, well, the artists want to own their records and they want to own their IP and all that kind of stuff, that's great as long as they know what to do with it. And a great management team is part of that. And if you have a great management team, you know, maybe you can exploit those recordings without a label. But one way or another, an artist needs a support system. I think it's important to point out as we talk about this is that you know, we need to make sure that the focus is on the right things, and to make sure that maybe artists out there, you know, understand that it's not just about money, or it's not just about owning your own stuff. You know, because even if you, let's say you have a deal with with a record company and they own it, you know, but you have a favorable percentage and everything like that, you know, it's not that you necessarily shouldn't do that because you don't own it, you know, because let's say you own it but you don't know what to do with it, you know, so you own 100% of nothing, you know, that's great. So it's just about being smart, and there's, you know, every situation is different for each person, and you just have to make sense of it and understand, you know, what may be right for you and what may be right for someone else.
So a bunch of people up here made career changes, being three of us being at major labels, and one being a lawyer and one being an accountant. Do you love it? Do you love being a manager? Do you wake up every day and go, this is a great gig?
Not necessarily every day, but yeah, overall, yes. I think that overall it's a great gig. It's an empowering gig. it's a creative gig. I think part of it is you can make it. You can have your own vision for it, and I don't think it's one size fits all. I think there's probably a lot of overlap, and it's a lot of different. But I think being able to kind of get into the creative side of things, I think it's the entrepreneurship is exciting. And for me, having been in the label system for so long, it felt so restrictive that being able to go in and say, we can do whatever we want. We want to take care of our fans. We want to make sure that our brand is strong and that we are who we are, and we never forget what's at the very core. But other than that, we can look at any single thing and opportunity that we want. We can dream as big as we want, and you can take a shot. And there's something so incredibly freeing about that I think that's the beauty of the job.
Bernie, for you.
Well said, Lee, for sure. I mean, as a lawyer, you have a bit of a lane, right? And it's pretty well defined what that is. And as a manager, you really you're involved in every aspect of your artist's career, right down to helping them with their charitable initiatives. I mean, everything. And I think that for me, we have to get creative when we're talking about owning and talking about IP, and it's like, what Benjy just said, it was so important, because you can own all your IP, but you're never going to break as an artist because you didn't do this publishing deal with this company that was going to get you the movie that was going to break you. And so these are the things that a manager talks to their artists about, and you plot it out together, and sometimes your artist agrees with you, and sometimes they don't, but you really engaged with them in a way that you can't in almost any other representative that's in orbit around your artist, whether it's the agent or the business manager. The manager is really in there on a granular level on everything that's important to the artist, and that's exciting. And so yeah, I wake up pretty jazzed.
Benjy, for you?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly rewarding. I like the feeling of helping and to be there to support someone. I like being behind the scenes. Look, there are some days where it's a complete pain, and we can't swear here in Singapore, but it's a complete pain in the behind.
Use gum.
Yeah. And it can be very frustrating, whether you're dealing with a label or you're dealing with an artist who you don't necessarily agree with, but in general, it's incredibly rewarding, and when it's going right, there's nothing like it.
Brian, you're running this great organization, the MMF. Would you invite these managers to be part of it? Could they be part of it? Right?
Yeah, for sure. It would be great. As I said, it's quite difficult. We're just a very small little territory, and the digital space is a really big global game. So the more managers and the more like-minded people we get together, I go back to your point about teamwork. It's way more essential than capital. I totally agree with that. It's the same principle with us trying to change the landscape. We need a whole bunch of people to work together as a team for the better benefit of us all, God willing.
It's interesting because I think it's a very competitive world, because people like to be really successful and have managed it all. I would say that there are certain managers in the United States that we won't mention that may have a name like Irving or something like that, that would be wouldn't be into it or whatever. But anyways, the fact that there's things that are happening right now, disruption, more economies opening up to music, more ways to break an artist, YouTube, right? The multi-channel networks, right? Video, getting your artist in a movie, doing all the brand stuff. You guys are really on the leading edge.
The power level is shifted also, and I mean the reality is, and we should talk about it. And actually, Bernie and I have discussed the idea of starting something that we've discussed it for a while. We've just been too lazy about it. But the power has shifted. There used to be, the labels had an immense amount of power for a long time, and now really it's all with the artists and the managers, all of it. So it's really, we shame on us if we don't lead.
And the labels are recognizing that as well. And most of the major labels now have artist management, departments or whatever, which it starts to get a little strange. But the blurring of the lines between a record company and a management company, it's been amazing. And for instance, we started as a record company. When we started managing artists, we didn't really have to change much. It's because we were still supporting them in very similar ways.
That's also because you're a small label. I think majors are
right.
ill-equipped to do it. I cannot imagine that will last in a significant way, because philosophically it's at odds with what the job really does need to be.
Absolutely, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. And when I first learned of them doing that, it felt really strange to me. And the reason it's not strange on our level is because our deal is very across the board. It's just 1%. It doesn't matter what we're doing. So
it's a partnership.
It's really a partnership, and so it's not like we're paying them a royalty and then you have to take back a percentage. I mean, it's just it can get really messy as we're talking about the major labels. There are ways to do it where it's a lot cleaner and it's a lot more boutique-y and smaller, and it's more of a partnership. But it's just interesting how that's evolving, and where it'll go. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, I hear you. I agree. And I have about a minute and 27, 26, 25, 24. Anybody has a question out there that they would love to ask this panel, the time is now, and it cannot be about buses in Canada. Anybody out there has one pertinent question for this wonderful panel up here? Anybody? No?
Yeah, there's one right there.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. Can we get him a mic?
Thanks, guys. I want to commend you for sometimes taking a risk for the artist, even though it may mean you make less money. Jerome Matthew from Pro Soul Alliance in Beijing. And it seems like everything you're saying is suggesting that the future of the music industry is the artist and the manager, and everything focusing around that hub, and the other players are not so important, and that being a business direct to fan, not only because it's better for the artist to vision and to keep the rights, but because actually they can earn more money. Would you agree that's true?
I don't think it's necessarily about money. I think that it's about landscape, and it's not that some of those players aren't important. I think that they can continue to be important. They may look differently, but I think that it's always been a kind of an entrepreneurial thing, but I think that's why it's real entrepreneurship. That is at the essence of what the business relationship needs to be, and as a result, it's the entrepreneur that needs to drive it and then utilize all of those resources as tools, and they could be important, but it's not just about how do we wring more revenue and let's take the power so we can get more money. That's not it. That's just it's the way the world is now. So whether we make a little money or make a lot of money, it is really in our hands to utilize all those different players as best as possible for each artist. And it is not one size fits all. It's always different.
So listen, I want to really thank this panel. It was amazing. You guys were really awesome. And then, well, obviously in the real world, you're really awesome. I want a big round of applause, right? Thank you very much.